Initiating Movieboys podcast. Still loading. Tempest and Ryan are on their way. Welcome. Please enjoy the show.
We are back with another episode of Movieboys. I am Ryan, and I'm here with my co-host Tempest.
Says hello in High Valyrian.
Hell yeah. And today we are going to be talking about HBO's new Game of Thrones prequel series, House of the Dragon. And first, I thought it would make sense, since no one really knows what our thoughts, general feelings are toward Game of Thrones in general, to get into that a little bit. And did you want to sort of start things off? And
for anyone who cares about spoilers, we're probably going to spoil, like, anything that happened in Game of Thrones is, like, free game for spoilers, but we won't say anything past, like, because they're based on books, so we won't say anything, like, past, like, the books that, like, then the season's already covered. That didn't make, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think that's fair to do. And this isn't, I mean, we haven't been doing this week to week. So I think a lot of the shows that, you know, a lot of the podcasts and shows that cover a show from week to week for a show that's, you know, an hour-long series, there's over 10 hours to discuss. They're going to get into the more, like, nitty-gritty details. Like, obviously, this is going to probably be a long podcast, but we're not going to be able to get into every single detail, where this is going to be kind of a general overview of how we feel. But yeah, we're going to get into spoilers for what Tempest said, but not, like, future book stuff that hasn't been revealed yet.
I have a confession to make, first of all, which I think I've already told you this, but I never have actually watched Game of Thrones, but what I have done is watch, like, a shit ton of video clips on YouTube, and then watched, like, 50 million video essays talking about Game of Thrones. So I'm pretty well versed in, like, what happens in Game of Thrones. I do actually want to read the books, and then eventually, like, my partner seemed interested in wanting to watch the Game of Thrones series, but I didn't ever, like, actually watch the series when it was airing, or, like, sit down and watch it, like, as, you know, after that. Mainly because, like, Game of Thrones got popular when I was in college, and I didn't have HBO money in college, so yeah. I just didn't watch it. But now I do have HBO money as a not college student, so that's why I decided to watch House of the Dragon. Although I only watched it, I had no faith in this series, based off of just all my friends who had watched Game of Thrones and talking about how much they hated the ending and how horrible the last few seasons were. I had very little faith that this was going to be any good, just because the show really seemed to degrade in quality. It's like the meme with the horse drawing, and it's, like, drawn by like a kid towards the end of the horse drawing.
Yeah. I not only would I say that I was not looking forward to this show, I was just not even planning to watch it. Like, I remember when the trailer for this came out, I wasn't, like, angry, but I was just like, fuck off. Like, I'm not, like, there's no chance that they're gonna hook me. I was like, I'm gonna wait until the end of season 1. I'll see what people say. If everyone's really positive about it, maybe I'll give it another chance. But I was pretty hurt by the last, I don't know. I was kind of an apologist of Game of Thrones up until that final season, even because I think that what a lot of people don't express is, a lot of people complain about that final season, and that's because it is the worst one. But there's just, like you said, like that meme of the drawing of the horse. It's just, I feel like it really started to, they started to get too obsessed with spectacle and just the memes of what the show was. Like, all the characters started to become more and more, like, flanderized and just, like, caricatures of themselves, and the dialogue just became less and less interesting, and it became more about these big battle sequences, and the logic started to go out the window, like, completely, like, in those final couple seasons. And that's honestly, I'm pretty forgiving when it comes to that stuff, I'll fully admit, but it's just, once it gets to that level of ridiculousness, and it just doesn't seem like the showrunners and the writers cared enough about the characters anymore, and they just wanted to get it over with, I think that's where you're going to lose me. And yeah, that final season of Game of Thrones was really, really rough.
Well, they literally did just want to get it over with. Like George R. R. Martin recently just said that he thought that Game of Thrones should have gone on for 10 seasons at least. Or, like, I think he even said 12 or something. He wanted more seasons, but the people who were the showrunners, David Weiss and whatever the fuck, Benioff and Weiss, they apparently had like a contract deal to do some Star Wars movies. So they were just like, we just want to do Star Wars, so we're just gonna wrap up Game of Thrones. And then it looks like because of how bad the reception was to the last Game of Thrones, it looks like they lost their Star Wars contract, which I am not mad about because I don't. Okay, a lot of people have said this about them. I think they're fine at doing an adaptation from source material for the most part. Like a lot of people have said that, like when, because that was the big problem, is they ran out of source material for the show, so they kind of had to just make shit up towards the end because they didn't have any books to draw from because George is still writing the books. So they seemed like they were fine when they had source material to take stuff from, but when it came to making their own shit up, they just aren't very good. One of them, I don't know which one of them, was like the scriptwriter for that fucking terrible Wolverine X-Men Origins movie with the horrible Deadpool. So I have no faith in these people. I'm not interested in like watching anything those two make. I think also, weren't they supposed to do, didn't they pitch like they wanted to do an HBO series where it was like what would happen if the Confederate won the Civil War, and then people freaked out and they're like, we don't want to see this because it's, you know, not a good political time to do something like that.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, I actually totally forgot about that. That's just another, just another horrible thing that I don't know. I totally agree. And I think I don't know, a line that I always think about as being so indicative of like a later season Game of Thrones line that just sums up the kind of caricaturization of the characters, I can't talk today, is when Tyrion says, well, that's what I do. I drink and I know things. And it's just like that. That is kind of, so if you think about it, like if you really want to like frat boy eyes what that character is, it's like, okay, you can put that on a t-shirt, and they have, and they sell a lot of those t-shirts, and a big part of the audience became like, I mean, the show was really fucking popular for a fantasy show, and I think it was just, they started to really like sort of pander to that side of the audience. And there's nothing wrong with playing to a larger audience, but not at the they didn't have to dumb anything down. People liked the show for what it was. People liked it for the drama, and people liked it for people liked it as a character study kind of show, and not for these big like one-liner meme fucking moments that it became as it went along. And yeah, I mean, all you need to say about that final season is they just, I personally don't even hate where it ended up with some of the characters. It's just the way that they got there. And even George R.R. Martin has said as much, which is part of why I actually ended up watching House of the Dragon. It was really funny because George R.R. Martin, in the lead up to House of the Dragon coming out, was talking so much shit about Game of Thrones. And I actually appreciated that so much that I decided to watch it, because he was very honest and open about how he didn't hate it, but he was just really disappointed, and he felt like it needed more time. And I couldn't have agreed more. And just hearing that he had more involvement with this series just gave me a little bit of hope. And seeing that HBO, like, I can't think of a major company that would allow a creator of a show to talk so much shit in like promoting a new show. But I think that was honestly what they needed to do to get people like me and certain people back, because it really stung people so hard.
I really liked how this season went. I had zero expectations. I had negative expectations, and I didn't really start watching week to week until probably about the 4th episode, but just hearing people talk about it online and how it was good and it had potential, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. So I'm and then having seen the whole season, I feel excited about what they're going to be doing. I feel happy about what they did. I'm a little bit nitpicky when it comes to a few things, but overall, I really liked it, and it's definitely a nice redemption moment from the horrible last Game of Thrones season.
It's a great redemption. Not only for me is it a great redemption moment, it has some of my I think some of my favorite episodes of any, like including any of the best Game of Thrones. Like, I think that it honestly is so much about this show. They just captured what was so good about like the first 4 or 5 seasons of Game of Thrones, and it isn't as much about the massive battles and the spectacle. And I know that stuff is coming, but I think following interesting characters with conflicting motivations and not being able to clearly pick one side over the other. Like I heard a lot of people complaining about like not having a character to root for, and it's like, well, that's, I mean, I feel like has always been the most interesting part and the most entertaining part about Game of Thrones to me, is seeing characters with conflicting motivations who are born into this like horrible system and are just sort of forced to reckon with it and decide like who they want to be, even though everything around them is crumbling, and even though their world is horrible and miserable. Like I'm gonna do like a very, very general like sort of plot overview, I guess. I imagine most people who listen to this have probably either watched the season or they have a good idea. But so Viserys, the current king and father of Rhaenyra Targaryen, loses both his wife and son in childbirth and decides to appoint his daughter Rhaenyra to be the next heir. And that's a big deal because it's really unprecedented at this time to have a woman on the Iron Throne, because it's just, they think it's going to be wildly unpopular amongst the people. And he basically tells her of this prophecy, the Song of Ice and Fire, and that's something that was a little, from what I understand, a little bit different from the books. And it sort of describes why it's so important, why he believes it's so important for her to be on the throne, and something that Targaryens are like, especially Viserys is kind of known for, are these like crazy dreams that they have and prophecies that they have. So this is them kind of trying to find a way to tie the original series in. And I really didn't mind that, honestly. But a big part of this series is not only Rhaenyra's relationship with Viserys and her sort of deciding what she's going to do in this society, and if she's going to sort of start kind of fall in line with the system that's in place. And that's kind of what her relationship with her father's like. Is her relationship with her childhood friend Alicent, who is the daughter of the Hand of the King, Otto Hightower, and their relationship becomes really strained after her mother dies because she becomes her father's wife, and basically that kind of sets all of these. To put it like really broadly, it sets all of these horrible events in stone, and it just creates this like almost like Shakespearean like rift over the years that just sort of gets worse and worse and worse, because Alicent's father from a young age is just constantly pushing Alicent to get closer to Viserys. He clearly wants more power for their family, and she's sort of, while she, I think, I mean, from what I got from it, I know some people I've talked to feel differently. I think that Alicent isn't necessarily coming from the worst place possible. I think that she does care about her father, but he wants power, and he lets her know that like Rhaenyra could be a threat to her, and it's just, she's really unsure of what to do, and it kind of just forces them against each other. And that's something that I honestly really, really liked about this season, is that I felt like it really made me understand both sides, and it just kind of made it like even more heartbreaking as it went on to see like things just continue to escalate and get worse and worse for them, I guess.
Did you like the original actors who played Rhaenyra and Alicent more? Or do you like the newer ones?
So at first, so I guess that actually goes into I guess my one main complaint with this season, and I really loved it overall. I think that, so I actually liked the actors. Like I thought that it was a little bit jarring when they made the change. And I think that's because I don't know how any show would pull off a 10-year time jump. Like that's just really difficult to do. Like there's so much that happens, because throughout the season, for people who don't know, like throughout the season, they're kind of doing these little time jumps. And by little, I mean, there's still like 6 months to a year. Like each episode is like, and they like make it very clear each episode. They're like, it's been 6 months. It's been a year. Like they'll, like, and I thought they did a pretty good job with making it clear. But then later on, there's this 10-year time jump, and that's where the actresses for Rhaenyra and Alicent change. And I thought that, like, from what I've read, that they cast the older actors first, and I thought, and then they cast the younger ones based off of them. And I thought they did a pretty good job with it overall. How did you feel about that?
I think that Olivia Cook, who plays the older Allison, I think I like her more than, I think it's like Emily Carey or Emma Carey, who played like the younger Allison. I just think like she's a bit stronger of an actor, so I've been enjoying her performance more. But I would say that I think it's Millie Alcock, and then Emma Darcy, who play both versions of Rhaenyra. I think they were both pretty strong, and I like different things about them.
I think my thing with the younger, okay, I guess, and that goes into where I think in that 10-year gap, I think there was, and I don't know, I haven't obviously read the books or like the novellas or whatever that this is based on, but it does to me feel like we kind of missed a piece of Alicent. I feel like, because I think that obviously the last thing we see from the young Alicent is her walking into the wedding between Rhaenyra and Laenor Valerian, and we see that she's wearing green, and she comes in, and that's like, they explain that that's like a symbol of power for the High Towers, and
Yeah.
that's kind of, for 10 years, that's we don't see that 10-year gap, and I feel like after that gap, to me, Alicent, even though the actress is incredible, just comes off as like way more conniving, when that younger character, like you said, she comes off as like sweeter and kinder, and just more of like I don't know, and I guess I would have liked to see, if I'm going to make any complaints, I would have liked to see a little bit more of that development. And I think that part of that problem, and actually, I don't know if you read, George R. R. Martin said that he had kind of wished that even this season was like 13, 14 episodes.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the period that you would want to flesh out a little bit more. And my other thing was, well, actually, do you have anything else to say about that particular thing?
When it comes to like the episodes, like more episodes?
I guess just Allison in general, and that actress changing.
I think just in general, I felt like the episodes should have been like 20 to 30 minutes longer, or there should have been more like 1 hour episodes. You know what I mean? Like I think they needed a bit more development. Like they were taking a lot of leaps, and I understand why they did that. Like they have a lot of lore to get through, because we're not even like, we just like it ends at basically the start of the war, and like the rest of the series is going to be about the war they're going to be in. So, you know, this is just pre-gaming backstory. But I felt like if there was anything that was like the weakest, that is the weakest, is that there could have been more time fleshing out everything with all the characters, and they're kind of expecting you to kind of like just go along with some of like the progression, if that makes sense. Which, like, I think for me, why it's not, I have a theory about something. So I was thinking about how if you watch a TV show or a movie that's like an adaptation of something, or like a book or whatever, I feel like your brain kind of fills in a lot of like the missing plots and missing story beats. And because I haven't like read the books, but I've read like a bunch of spoilers, and I've seen like people talking about it, I feel like my brain is kind of like filled in a lot of like the things that they could have like shown in this first season, but they didn't, and like they cut for time. So I don't know. I guess like if I hadn't read all that stuff and like looked at spoilers, I think I'd probably feel a bit more, not like upset, but like it, like there needed to be more development, just like point blank. But like, you know, at the end of the day, I don't know. you what do you think?
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's a double-edged sword, though, because I do think it seems like fans of the book have been pretty happy with this. I haven't really seen, I mean, despite like maybe some little gripes, I think sometimes that makes the people who like the books like more frustrated, like them missing certain details. But I don't know. I think I've seen it go either way, but it definitely helps you to fill in like it definitely helps people to fill in certain details, and details that you might not even be thinking about. You know what I mean? It's just, it might be, like you said, it's just it's kind of like extra backstory that you read up on that you're kind of filling in when characters are doing and saying certain things. And clearly the writers of this show have that stuff in the back of their head too when the characters are making decisions. I think I looked back at, I think it was just the first 2 episodes after the massive time jump that I was like, I'm still liking this, but I feel like I've jumped into a new show. I felt like I needed to get a little bit reinvested. But looking back after the end of after getting to the end of the season, I think I kind of looked at those episodes a little bit more positively, because I think initially I was just, again, I really liked that. I've said this a million times, but I really like that they make the relationship and the conflict between Alicent and Rhaenyra kind of understandable, and you see where their relationship has soured over the years, but it's not because one or the other is just a piece of shit. And I think that after the time jump, I was like, oh fuck, are they just gonna make Alicent like kind of a conniving like bitch now? And it kind of seemed like that initially, but I feel like that changed, because it really, as time went on, because I think the more they showed with her and the relationship between her sons, and the fact that at the end, when she had a chance to just, in a coup, just fucking kill Rhaenyra, and she clearly didn't want to. And it almost becomes more about this animosity that's been built up between their sons too, and that becomes more of the problem. But clearly, yeah, this is a massive show, and this is a lot to talk about. But yeah, I guess my other issue after the time jump was they during that 10-year period, Rhaenyra gets involved with a different knight, Sir Harwin, and has kids with Sir Harwin, and this becomes an issue because her husband, Laenor Valyrian, is clearly not the father of these kids.
Yeah,
and that becomes like a massive source of conflict. And I guess that was another thing where I felt a little bit, after the time jump, a little bit more disconnected, because it was like I feel like I needed to see their relationship a little bit to understand, like, why would Rhaenyra take this risk? Because that's such a big risk, and clearly it's going to be an issue. And it's like, this is such a big risk. If I saw that, like, oh, but it was because she really, really loved and cared for this guy, I'd be like, okay, I can understand. But not seeing that, it was like, okay, does she really care about this? I don't know. That was another big gap for me that I needed.
Another thing, okay, so in the books, the Valyrians aren't black; they're just white. I actually like that the show made them like a black family. I just think it's cool, because this, I don't know if this is gonna sound weird, but like, you know, like Corlys Velaryon, the guy with the locks. I just think his character design is fucking cool.
Yeah, and honestly, I liked that too, and I thought that. No, I think that all of those actors did a fantastic job, and I think they really pulled that aspect off. I kind of assumed that was a change that they made, but honestly, I don't know. Just based on what people were complaining about, I could assume that was not. I feel like, I will say, I think a lot less people complain about that than they did with the Rings of Power making that change.
Yeah, I feel like it works and it makes sense, and I don't know. I think it's a fun change. Like, it doesn't take away from the story, and I think it makes sense that this family would be black, because they're still from like the same original country, but they're like different like regions. So like, I don't know, it makes sense to me. Oh, but what I was gonna say is, because they're not black in the book, the whole thing with like the kids being illegitimate, it's less obvious, because, you know, both like the characters are like the characters are basically all white. So honestly, I wish they would have just made Sir Harwin also black, and then
that's an easy fix, actually.
Yeah, I wish they would have made him black, and then also for the kids, just give the kids like dark hair, and then have like everyone being like, when they're like grumbling about the legitimacy of the kids, just be like, these kids do not have like Targaryen white hair, they have black hair, like. That would have been more interesting to me. Like, I don't know. I guess it just seems really stupid. It's like really fucking obvious that these aren't the kids.
yeah. It makes Rhaenyra, and to me, I was like, as much as I totally agree, I'm happy with that change. What you suggested sounds a lot better, because it does make you think, like, okay, is Rhaenyra just being a little stupid? Like, she really doesn't think people will know. But at the same time, I don't know. If this is how it has to be done for those changes to be made, I don't care ultimately. But it was a small character thing that was compounded with like other character things that I was like, okay, I feel like I'm jumping into a new show at this point, because I would have liked to understand, like, why is she risking so much to be with this knight? Like, could it be anyone else? Like, does she just want to hook up with this guy and she's just ended up having kids with him? Like, why is this? And I don't know if that's something that's
They also
explored a little bit more
they
in
had
the
3
books.
kids together.
Exactly. So it couldn't have been just like a fling or something, you know? It was just like it was clearly something that was going on for a long time. So seeing a little bit more of that and why she connected with them, you know, connected with him so deeply. And maybe that's something we could see in flashbacks, but I don't know, probably not. I mean, I think we're probably past that point.
I don't know. I don't know how much I'm gonna want to see flashbacks in the following season. If anything, I want to see flashbacks with like Viserion or Viserys,
Yeah.
the king, because I feel like that would be interesting. But I don't need to see flashbacks with the fucking baby daddy. Like, no, we're good. In the books, Laenor is like never home. So that's another reason why everyone's like, these kids aren't legitimate, because he's just never fucking there. So it's like, when exactly is he getting her pregnant? And in this story, or in the TV version, it looks like he is there, like, a majority of the time, or he has been there most of the time. Oh, could we talk about something that, like, really fucking butters my biscuits?
Yeah.
At the wedding, when Sir Kristen Cole, is just like, oh, you have brought shame to me by suggesting I've had a, like, affair when I've taken my king's oath, so I'm gonna, like, beat your face in at a fucking wedding. And then, like, there seems to be no consequences whatsoever from that.
See, and that's okay. That's another thing that
Because
I had a
in the
problem with
books,
because of the time jump. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
because in the books, he kills the guy, but it's at like a tournament, so it's like he killed him like, well, like doing fighting combat or like jousting or something.
Yeah, and I guess like the implication was that Alicent was just being like hand wavy about it. I guess that was the implication afterwards. But again, that's something that I think you're right. Like that was a fucking crazy moment, and I actually really liked that episode overall. And just the way that whole wedding scene was directed, I thought was just it was just filled with so much tension and dread because of past, you know, Game of Thrones episodes that may have involved weddings. And I didn't necessarily think it was going to go like a full red wedding or anything, but still, like having a prolonged wedding scene where you know that you're getting all of these families together and there are going to be these crazy tensions, and seeing it culminate in that, I did think was really exciting. But I think doing the time jump, that even just one more episode where you get like what's the direct aftermath of this, and how does Sir Krispy Kreme, like how does he stay with, I don't know, like that was something I completely forgot about actually. And it's something that you kind of just, it sucks. I think that's just, again, that's the problem with this show, like taking such big time jumps and jumping around so much, you know what I mean?
Another thing I want to say is, like, I don't necessarily hate that this character died, because I didn't really feel that invested in him, but I do know that a lot of like queer people are upset that like you show, like, because this is a trope that a lot of queer people complain about, is when you have a relationship that's like gay or like whatever in a movie or TV show, and they're like happy, and then immediately like one of them dies, and a lot of people don't like that because it's kind of, it's just like an overdone trope that a lot of people don't like going back to like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Spoilers for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, came out 20 years ago, but like there's a gay relationship in there, and then like one of the one of the people in that relationship, they just get like murdered, and it's something that just happens too often. And I understand like why it upsets people, because it's kind of like a negative portrayal of something, but I also don't know what else you would have done with that relationship, because I don't know. Maybe you didn't need to kill him. He could have just gone away on a ship somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, obviously I don't have as good of an understanding of that, I feel like, but I don't know. The way that I saw some people complaining about that too, and I do think that it's just difficult with this show in particular, because any character that shows up, I'm like, well, this character might die in like
Yeah.
an episode. So but I don't know if that is sort of if it is like frustration from just a history of that happening. I understand, and I don't know. There might be there might be more like gay characters in the show going forward. It's entirely possible. I know a lot of people thought from the beginning that Rhaenyra and Alicent may have had like a thing too, but I personally didn't really see that. But I don't know. I know a lot of people thought that was. I saw some people saying they thought it was queer baiting, but I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not a lesbian, so I don't have like any insight into that, or like I guess I can kind of see it, because at one point she's talking about how she wants to like leave on Dragonback with her, and she just wants to like spend time with Alicent. And then later when Sir Krispy Kreme is on the boat and he's like, "You want to run away with me?" and she's like, "Nah, I'm good." So she's like fantasizing about like running away with Alicent, but not the guy that she fucked.
Yeah, okay, I guess I could see that.
So
No.
it's pretty subtle. Like, it's definitely, I don't know if it's like straight up queer baiting, but like it's like if there is supposed to be a romantic connection between them, it is very subtle. But I've heard a lot of I've seen like a lot of like queer women talk about this on TikTok, and it's like, this seems like every single like breakup I've ever had with a woman, where like we love each other and then we become like mortal enemies. I'm like, okay, I guess, whatever. I'll take your word for it.
That's funny. A character that we have not talked about yet is Daemon Targaryen, Matt Smith himself. How did you feel about that character during this season?
I really like this character, and I know that he's become very polarizing for a lot of people, and a lot of people didn't really like it the last episode where he chokes Rhaenyra. I feel like that makes sense for his character, and something I've seen some people kind of allude to this, but like I want to like stamp this out like real hard right now. Like, I think that, you know, the episode like the funeral where Aemond claims Vhagar, that's the same episode where Rhaenyra claims Daemon. And I know this might sound weird, but I think that, because I know that she has a dragon like Cyrax or whatever, but I think that actually, like, Daemon is her dragon, if that makes sense. Like Daemon is her biggest weapon in this war.
I mean, that is absolutely true. I mean, he definitely not like strengthens her claim, and is, I mean, based on what happened, like the battle at the Stepstones and everything, like he clearly is very well respected, and yeah, I could see that he's like a force to be reckoned with for many different reasons.
But also, I don't know if like how much you know about this, but the whole thing with like the Valyria, like people from Valyria and the Dragon Lords and stuff like this, they talk about like, oh, having the blood of the dragon. The whole point, like, it's kind of ambiguous, so you don't know for sure, but it's kind of implied that like the sorcerers in old Valyria use like blood magic to like combine dragons with humans, so that's why they're able to like control dragons, is because they literally are part dragon. It's also why people say that like every so often they have a stillbirth, and it's like a monstrous looking like dragon baby is what they, like a stillborn baby is what they give birth to. So that's, I this might sound like very, I don't know how to explain this other than like, I think Daemon is like literally a dragon. Like, he seems to have the closest connection with dragons in this show. Like, they show him pretty close with Caraxes. Like, they show also like the psychic connection kind of implied, where like he gets hit by the arrow and then like Caraxes cries out in pain. They also did the exact same thing when Rhaenyra was giving birth and like Cyrax was crying out in pain.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I hadn't thought about but you know, if you really think about it, he is a character that's really difficult to pin down at points, and he's very unpredictable, and
Like a dragon,
just like a dragon. And when you think you're I don't know, you think you have control, but then
because that was the whole theme
where he doesn't. Yeah, it was.
That was
I could see that.
That was what Viserys said at the beginning to Rhaenyra. He's like, people think that we control the dragons, but the illusion is like we don't control them. Like they're you know, like they're not like they're like, I guess that they would be sentient, but they're not slaves basically. Like they seem to have some of their like own like will and opinions.
Yeah,
so.
And I mean that moment him saying that is kind of like foreshadowing for what happens in the final episode with Aemon and his dragon, just chomping the little smaller dragon. I'm forgetting the names of the dragons, and killing
Arax is the dragon.
Yeah, and killing Rhaenyra's son in the process. And that was another moment, not to derail the theory, but that I think shows what I like about Game of Thrones. And although Aemon is a little asshole for sure, but just in that moment, it was kind of it was kind of surprising to see that he was surprised and kind of fucked up over what I feel like he didn't want to kill him. Like he just wanted to scare him. He just wanted to scare him.
And just wanted the fucking eye.
And these are kids. Like these are younger people, and this is why you shouldn't. This is why monarchies are a fucking disaster. Like it's just like this. It's you can't trust these children with this much power, and the fact that they are just kind of strengthening the animosity and the hate that's just building between these families too is just it's just disturbing that can happen at all. It's like what they're doing should just have no bearing on anything. Like, you know what I mean? Because they're just little kids, and that's just the whole fucked up thing about Game of Thrones in general, that I think this series might honestly do better than the original show.
I think it's going to be interesting next season because he's going to have that choice he's going to have to do one of two things. He's going to have to say that like he lost control of like basically like this giant weapon, or he has to like say that he did it on purpose. So that's going to be very interesting. I'm curious where they're going to go with that.
Yeah. And no, I definitely agree though with Daemon, that final moment of choking Rhaenyra, it like surprised me, and then it didn't at the same time. You know, it's like it kind of makes sense that it would come to that in a way.
It really bothered me when everyone was like, I can't believe he would do this. And I'm like, he killed his first wife. And and he was like basically grooming Rhaenyra when she was a child to like fuck him. So
he's not a good person.
No, this isn't a good character. And like, I feel like people like are making a lot of excuses for him in the way of like, oh, he like Rhaenyra is special. And it's like, I think she is special in the way that like he really values like old Valyrian culture, and he also like values her just because of her status. But I think she's just kind of like not like almost like a thing for him versus like an equal partner.
He's just like the pure like id of a character. He just goes after what he wants, and whether that's harmful to him or not, I don't really think. I feel like he's not even really thinking about it. He's just trying to go for like the most power in any situation.
He's a dragon. That's
you know what? I like that. I actually really like that a lot. I hadn't thought of it in that way, and it makes total sense, that parallel, because part of me wants to learn more about like his motivations behind what he's doing, but then there's part of me that's like, maybe that's kind of what makes him interesting, is that he's just this kind of this void. Like there's just nothing. Like there's no like like clearly he's not thinking about the ethics of things, but aside from what you said, which he just cares. He's kind of drawn to the family history and just the blood that he has, which I think is also, I mean, the nicest thing he does all season is helping Viserys up when he's trying to get onto the throne and like make the claim that Rhaenyra is the true heir. But you know, obviously he's doing it seems nice in that moment, but the more you think about it, it's just like, well, he could also just be doing this literally just because, I mean, it strengthens Rhaenyra's claim and it's going to help him to get power. But it did seem like a nice thing to do for his brother in that moment at the same time. I think it was maybe a little bit of both.
Oh, I heard someone else say this, where people are saying that they think that he's ultimately a good person, but he just does some bad things. And I think it's the other way around. I think he's a bad person who just occasionally does some good things.
Yeah, he's kind of like, and I know that I feel like he's kind of like the Jaime in this series. He's even, I'd say maybe even shittier than Jaime, but he kind of seems to fill that role of like the handsome rogue piece of shit type of character. He's definitely not like as comical or like as likable as Jaime. I think he's more easily disliked. But yeah, I think that when it comes to shows like this especially, it's so interesting that so many people are like actually trying to just sort of unironically defend him, because it's like you can like a character and sort
Yeah.
of think they're interesting, but not like the character. You know, there's a difference between those two things. And
Yeah,
I
like
feel like I would hope that people would have figured that out by now, but I don't know.
I really like I think Eamon the one-eyed guy, like he's my favorite character, but he's also kind of like he's still a piece of shit. Like
He is, and he's great. He's a great character, you know?
I think that's one thing that's always been fucking annoying about like internet fandom and fandom culture is like people see the need to defend people on like they have to defend their morals or something, and it's like no, you can like problematic people. Like this is a fantasy story, it's fiction. It's okay with liking a bad person. It's not like we're liking Hitler or something.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's fiction. It's if these characters were existed in real life, like no one would want to talk to any of them. Like, but obviously in this fantasy setting, it's way more interesting that way.
And also,
it's not going to be
like I just like them because they're an interesting character. I'm not like, oh, I like him because he killed his nephew. Like that's why I like him. I'm like, no, I just think he's like an interesting character, and I think he's got a lot of. I think he has good motivation for like hating his nephew because he took his fucking eye. I think he has like there's the theme of like the second sons, or like the like the basically like the son in the family who has like more ambition or maybe is better qualified, but they're put down because they weren't the firstborn. So he has like the second son thing going on with his need to like prove himself, and he's like he even gives that speech at one point. He's like, I have the biggest dragon in the world, like I am like the most trained, blah 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 blah. And I just I don't know, I like a lot of those things about his character, like and where he's gonna go, but I'm not like, yeah, I think he's a good person deep down.
right, because you're not like a psycho. Like you're not like you're not doing the I can fix him thing. That
No.
that's I don't know. That's so weird. I don't understand when people do that.
I saw this thing and it's like it was like the speech. I don't remember what it was. It's like a TikTok thing, and it's like, you want to fix him? Well, I'm gonna accept him for who he is. And it's like, you don't like the murder? I love the murder. It was like, that's kind of how I feel.
Christ.
Like
Yeah.
I don't feel like I can fix him. Like no, I accept him for who he is. Like I'm okay with the murder.
And that's
Not like-
that's all we're saying here is that we appreciate these people for who they are and we love them.
Yes. Oh, do you think that like Helena's kids are actually his and not Aegon's? Because that's a theory that's going around.
I'm not sure, honestly.
Because you
I
remember
haven't given that like a ton of thought, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Because you remember at the funeral where he's like, "Oh, I have to marry our sister," and he's like, "I would perform our duty if I had been betrothed to her." Like he kind of seems a little like lustful towards his sister. So there's a theory that basically those kids, like her kids, are basically Aemon's kids and not Aegon's kids.
Oh, interesting. No, I actually had not. That's interesting. I actually had not heard that one.
Oh, could we talk very briefly about the incest?
Oh yeah, of course.
So
That's a big part. That's a big part of Game of Thrones. So yeah.
I don't want to talk about like, is incest like moral or not, because I'm not interested in that debate. But one thing that kind of annoys me about the incest, and they're kind of alluding to it a bit, but I wish there was more of a consequence for it. When incest happens in real life, basically why like a lot of people would consider it to be bad, just like from like a like not like looking at morals, that like completely getting rid of that part of the equation, looking at like just like your genetics and your health. There's a lot of health problems that come along with incest, like lower fertility, basically any recessive traits get like expressed very strongly. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, like if you remember this from history class when you were like younger, but like the Romanov family, they had like hemophilia, that the blood clotting or the blood thin disease, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And that was because of all the incest. And there's other things that happen too in like other royal families throughout history where basically the incest like slowly kind of like kills them, basically, because for a population to be like healthy and thrive, like just on like a genetic diversity level, like it's good to not have sex with people you're related to and make offspring, because you'll have more genetically robust like fertile offspring that has like a good chance of not passing on like health problems. So that's like the biggest thing that I don't like about the incest is I wish there was more. I wish we saw more of a consequence for what they were doing, because that would make sense for me. Like, I think would also make it narratively a bit stronger. And they do show it a little bit. Like, there's a lot of stillbirths and like fertility problems within this family. So they are kind of showing it, but I wish it was just like a little bit more obvious of like they're doing, because the whole reason why they're doing the incest thing is because to keep the magic in their family, the blood magic. And this goes back to like but even before like Aegon like conquered Westeros. This goes back to like when they were in Valyria, they were doing incest there. So this is like many generations of incest, and I wish it was just more expressed that there would be like some sort of chronic like health problem or something, because I don't know, I feel like that's the one thing that bothers me about the incest.
And maybe that, I don't know, maybe that'll be something that's expressed a little bit more down the line. I've kind of just seen it, I definitely have like get the blood magic thing, but it's also just like I just see the Targaryens as just so fucking obsessed with themselves and their own family that they're like, this, like, who could be better than just being with another one of us? Like, it's also in that I kind of see it in that way too. But maybe, I agree. I kind of hope that maybe we'll get into that a little bit more. And then again, I don't really know what happens in the books, but I hope we kind of get into that a little bit more in the next season. Cause I agree. There absolutely should be some kind of consequences for it. Like, I know in Game of Thrones, I don't really know if this implication is in the show, but I've heard that this implication is in the books, with Joffrey and being the son of Cersei and Jaime, and him just kind of being this little crazy fucking psychopath. And I think that there are a lot of fan theories that that's somehow related to the incest, but that's not as like, obviously it's not as it's not as direct as I think you're saying you would like.
Yeah, I just want something like the hemophilia, like something where it's like a genetic disease in the family. I think that, I don't know. And it's like I said, it's kind of implied with all the infertility, because that is a side effect of incest, is like fertility issues. But I don't know. I wish it was a little bit more explicit. I know it seems like a little bit of a specific thing to gripe on, but I don't know. It's just something that sticks out to me.
I think it makes sense. Like, introducing something like that, you don't want it to just be like window dressing. You don't want it to be like, oh, this is, there's incest because it's Game of Thrones and because of the time period it was in. You want it to actually show people like, no, there's actually consequences for this. There's reasons why this is not. I mean, there's, okay, like you said earlier, there's a lot of other ethical reasons, but there's many reasons why people don't do this. And you want that to sort of manifest in some bigger way. I think that makes sense.
Which, like I said, I don't know all the spoilers, so maybe it is going to come up like you said, but I don't know. That's
maybe
like
it's something they could add into the show specifically if it's not in the source material itself.
True. I don't know. I don't know how well it kind of feels like everyone's like ignoring the incest, if that makes any sense. Like, we're all just supposed to go. Like, we're all just supposed to go along with it. Like, people are rooting for like, yeah, like Daemon and Rhaenyra. They want them to get together. Like, I ship them, and it's like, that's her fucking uncle. Like, okay.
Yeah, it's very funny. I've seen that too, and it's like, it's so weird. It's like in this Game of Thrones world, it's like people have just kind of, they've kind of just moved on and accepted it, I guess, which is very weird. Like you said, there's just really no. I mean, there's no consequences for it. It's just kind of. It's kind of just par for the course. It's part of the experience, I guess.
Oh, another thing I want to talk about when it comes to like, I guess like medical accuracy, I really appreciate how scary they show that childbirth is, especially during like, because it's supposed to be like set like if it was like Middle Ages Europe, and the infant mortality and like the mother mortality rate back then was terrible, like compared to now. And even today in like our modern time with like modern medicine, it's still there are still like risks associated with getting pregnant and carrying like a child to term. Like there's a lot of health risks associated with that, and then also like labor and delivery. There's a lot of like health issues that can be associated with that. Especially back then, a lot of people fucking died. And I saw someone else talking about this, how it that something like this has never really been depicted in a show this explicitly before. And I've seen a lot of people talking about how like there'd be like men in their life who'd watch the show and then like they would ask like their sisters or like their mom or whatever and be like, is it like, they would just like ask about it because, you know, they didn't think about it. And I think that's, I like that because I think someone else was talking about this where basically they're still showing these women experiencing like violence and trauma, but it's something else other than just like showing rape all the time like they did in Game of Thrones. And it's something that I think, I don't know, I think it's more interesting for character development, especially like with Rhaenyra, when that, like in the last episode, she finds out her dad dies, she loses her child, like her daughter, and you know, then she loses her son, and like you can see kind of like the headspace of what she would be in, of like, yeah, she's probably not making like the best decisions in that like that direct moment because of everything that happened that day.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I thought that the depiction of that in this show is really interesting, and yeah, it's like nothing I've ever seen in a show before, and it's something like you said that they've never really delved into in Game of Thrones at all, and just how awful just having a baby at that time would be. And I think that I really liked that. A lot of people complained about how much of it there was, but I actually liked that in the first and last episode, it kind of parallels like Rhaenyra's mother having to go through that, but having so much help around her, and just and still like even though like what they were doing was going to kill her, she still had a lot of people making that just kind of making that decision for her and controlling her.
Yeah.
And then in the finale, Rhaenyra is just like, I'm doing this myself. I don't want anyone touching me. I don't want anyone to help me. And I thought that it was just such an interesting character moment that showed so much of like what she's been through this season with not being able to trust Alicent, like everything that she's been through and the relationships that she's had have all led to her just being really understandably like really distrustful of people, to the point where in that like horrible like painful moment she refuses any assistance. And I thought that was I don't know, I really thought that was a good character moment. And like you said, I mean, it's just something you don't see very much, and in a season that's clearly focused around it being unprecedented for a woman to take the throne. I think that showing this struggle was really kind of like thematically important. Like I thought that also in the first episode, showing Rhaenyra's mom going through the childbirth that kills her, sort of juxtaposed with the jousting scene. I think a lot of other people have said it better than I could, but it's just, I don't know, like especially at the time, at the pre-war time in the show, it just shows how it kind of shows who's really suffering for the realm in that moment, and who is just suffering for almost for nothing, because they're suffering and they're, at the end of the day, they're not really going to have any power or any say in what happens.
Didn't the mom at one point, wasn't there a quote basically saying that like a woman's role in war is like her battlefield is like the labor bed or something?
Yeah, no, I don't remember the exact quote, but you're absolutely right. Like that's paraphrasing it, and I think that's, I don't know, that's really telling. And oh man, I'm forgetting her name.
Rhaenys is
Rhaenys. Oh man, some of the names are so similar. I was worried about getting these right. I've done okay until now. So
Rhaenys is the cousin of Viserys who got passed over for the throne, and she's the lady who's married to Corlys Velaryon.
Right. So yeah, that was, again, like I think that I found her character really interesting for that reason too, because she was just such a good reflection of the past and what of the history of King's Landing, and how women have been passed over. And also you sense a level of bitterness, especially to Rhaenyra when she's younger. But as she gets older, I've liked that relationship kind of strengthened, and she kind of started to respect Rhaenyra. I really liked that arc throughout, and I think it kind of, I don't know, it played along with that theme of the show really, really well.
Oh, one thing I really fucking did not like what they did. The beast within the beast beneath the boards, the thing that, you know, Helena keeps saying there's a beast beneath the boards, and then like she get like when they conquer or when they show them crowning Aegon and like she busts up through the floor of the dragon pit with her dragon Melis. That doesn't happen in the books. And I don't like that because basically like a bunch of like, you know, like common folk, peasants probably died. And I think they need to acknowledge that or something next season, because they do show like with Mazaria the White Worm, like how she's talking to like the people and like basically saying like you can't like fuck with us basically. Like I don't, if they basically don't ever fucking acknowledge this again in like a negative way of like, oh, like Rhaenys busted through the ground with her dragon and she killed a bunch of people. Like if they ignore it, I think it's gonna be like, I don't want like shocking moments like that just to be like shocking. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like
I thought that it was such a great episode otherwise that it didn't really bother me as much. But if they don't acknowledge it, I would absolutely hate that. But like it wasn't totally necessary. It did feel like it was a very like character focused episode, you know, showing like what Alicent is, because the finale is just focused on Rhaenyra. That episode's just focused on Alicent and what she's going through and everything. And it did feel like they were like, we need something really bombastic to happen. And I don't know if they necessarily needed to execute it in that way. I agree.
It's also bringing up some slight plot holes in the sense that like she's like, well, it's not my war to start, or like I don't have any stakes in this. And it's like she does have a stake in this. She has her granddaughters who are going to be affected by this, and the fact that she had this moment of basically killing all of them because they're committing treason too, so it's not like she wouldn't be justified. And she's like, I'm not doing it, it's not like my job to like start this war, like blah blah blah, like it's not me. It's like it just seems annoying because they show her giving a shit about her granddaughters, and like if you would like follow this character through the like the conclusion of like how this scene would probably have gone, she probably would have just chosen to kill them. And because she didn't, I don't know. That's what bothers me about it.
Yeah, and again, I hope that that's something that they address later on, because it could just be. Because if they express it as just like a serious like character flaw and like a contradiction that she has like within herself, I think I would appreciate that a lot more than them just kind of hand waving it and not really addressing it. No, I totally agree with that, honestly.
Is there anything else we haven't talked about so far?
Yeah, there's actually I would kind of like, I think there's like one main thing that I would like to talk about that we haven't talked about yet, which is the sad man trying to keep his family together, Viserys. Yeah, Paddy Constantine as Viserys is just so incredible throughout this season, and he goes through such like a fucked up transformation that's kind of, they start showing you that he's kind of just maybe too good for the throne isn't the right word, but that he's kind of just too soft for the throne, because it's literally from the very beginning it's cutting him and creating these sores, and he gets this illness. I don't know if it's, do you know what the illness is?
They said that it's basically like leprosy.
Okay, that's kind of that's the sense that I got. But yeah, there's this leprosy like illness that's sort of accelerating throughout the series, and honestly each episode where it went through a time jump and he made it, I was like, oh shit, oh my god, Viserys made it another time jump. It's like, when he made that 10-year time jump though, that surprised me the most. I really did not think that he was gonna last that long. But it is nice, and I think that in a way he sort of serves a similar function that like a Ned Stark type of character does, where he is kind of, he's I don't want to say like too good for a lot of those people, but he's in the wrong game, you know. He's just a little bit too kind and a little bit too nice, and it's just, I don't know. I don't know about you, but I really love, one of my favorite episodes of the season is the 8th episode.
Yes,
where he
that probably is my favorite episode.
That's honestly one of my favorite episodes of anything, including in Game of Thrones. Just seeing him have to, you know, walk up to the Iron Throne under his own volition, and he's not taking the opiates he's been taking, the milk of the poppy. He's not taking it anymore, and he's just suffering, but just to make sure that he strengthens Rhaenyra's claim like one more time, and just fighting to do that. Just the music in that scene is so good. The music throughout the entire show is great, but that's like a moment where it like really, really shined, I thought. And that whole moment, I was like honestly getting like kind of emotional watching it. And I think
it was great. It was the best scene of the season.
It was just so nice. And it's just, especially after, I this is like a random shot out of nowhere for no reason, but especially after watching through Rings of Power, where I just felt absolutely nothing and was just hollow and just dead inside throughout the entire show. Basically, it was nice to just feel something and just feel like, wow, they've really done the work with these characters. And just seeing Damon help him too was really nice. And
apparently that was improvised.
Oh, was it? Oh, that's fucking amazing. I actually love that. Yeah, I watched that episode. Like, I've seen that. I actually have watched that episode like 3 times. Like, I've watched it with a couple other people, because anytime a friend is like, oh, I'm watching Game of Thrones or whatever, or sorry, I'm watching House of the Dragon, and if they're near that episode, I'm like, oh, let me know. I'll like turn it on and watch it again, because it's just so good. And it just encapsulates what makes this show so good. And going back to what we were saying about Game of Thrones in the beginning, I feel like these moments, just like Tyrion, another one that I think of in the Game of Thrones is Tyrion defending himself in court. It's like these little like character moments are what makes Game of Thrones in this universe so powerful, and what they will do for their family and what they'll do for each other, like no matter the circumstances. Like, I feel like that's what makes it so interesting and engaging. And it's not just these, even though the battles are in a lot of Game of Thrones are very well done, it's like that kind of became like what the show is about to the creators, and it's way more than that. And I think that this episode just nails it perfectly. It just felt so earned, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. I hate using the word perfect, because like nothing's perfect, but it's like as close to perfect as it could be.
It's just one of those moments in a movie or a TV show that just like kind of, this is going to be corny, but whatever, where you kind of feel like you're transcending where you are, and you're just so in the moment and so like sucked in to what's happening that it feels real. You know, it's just, it sounds weird to say it in that way, but it's just, it was great. And I don't know, for as much as I did have a little complaints with the time jump, I feel like they really did fix some of the problems that I had and like turned it around. And it also just that dinner scene afterwards where he's trying to bring them together and make them, it's like the worst Thanksgiving dinner ever, where he's just like trying to have Alicent, when he has Alicent and Rhaenyra actually say something nice to each other. Like, I talked to a couple people who were like, I feel like they didn't mean it. And I think they did. I think that
I think they did.
Relationships are more complicated. They're not black and white. You know what I mean? I think there is still some love between them, but it's just very complicated. Like, there's just so many. There's so many things that have come between them over the years, and then just that final moment of. And I maybe you can jump in if you remember it, but I from what I understand, they kind of interpreted the final moment between Alicent and Viserys a little bit differently. I heard, and again, I'll cut this out if I'm completely wrong and if you correct me or whatever. But I heard that Alicent, it's kind of, you're kind of led to believe that she made it up in the books. Is that true? About Viserys basically saying that her son or their son Aegon should be the next king. Is that true in the books?
I don't know. I don't remember. I do know that like Alicent is a bit more of a sympathetic character in this, because like in the books they talk about how in the books they talk about how Viserys was like left in his bedroom for 7 days, and like when they finally got to him, he was like a bloated, like rotting corpse. Yeah. So and also it kind of seems like I did get the sense that like maybe not like loves him, but like I think like she felt definitely like a duty towards Viserys that like wasn't really talked about too much in the books. I saw some people talking about how Alicent is just like hearing what she wants at the end when he's like talking about Aegon and the prophecy or whatever, the prince who was promised and stuff. But I don't know if anyone remembers this, but like back during the hunt episode, he's talking like he has like he's drunk and he's like talking about prophecies and stuff to Allison then. So it's not
I didn't
like
even think about
this is coming out of nowhere. Like, you know, like she's heard him talk about this before. So I do feel like there is this reason where she could like suspect that like what he's saying is like what the interpretation that she got is like true, and she's not like just being malicious about
Yeah,
it.
I don't know, and yeah, I've heard what you have said, which is that she's way more unlikable in the books, and I don't know, I find her to be pretty sympathetic in the show, and I get a sense that you're right. I don't know if she like really loves him and is in love with him in that way, but she does seem to care about him, I feel like, and wants to do right by him. And I think in that final moment, I do think she believes what he says, and I think she does want to do right by him. And no, I really, God, that final that moment is just in that revelation just hurts so much, like especially after what came before it, and you knew it was coming, like that there's going to be another rift that tears them apart, but it just made it so much more effective to have that moment where they all kind of came together like right before. I thought that worked really well.
Oh, can I talk about something that I really, really, really like?
Yeah, of course.
And I hope they like they expand more on this. So a lot of this is based off of like English history, European history, like medieval history, and the whole thing with like monarchies is the idea that these people believe that they were literally chosen by God to rule these people. And that doesn't exactly, that's like real world monarchies, but in this world it doesn't exactly exist that way, because how this monarchy got started was Aegon the Conqueror came over from Valyria, and he literally like just conquered this entire country. And they were talking, I think it was like, I forget who exactly was talking about it, but they're saying how they wanted to incorporate more of like this idea that Aegon like came here because he had prophecies about the Song of Ice and Fire and like saving these people like from the White Walkers or whatever the fuck it is. And that's why these people feel like it is their duty to rule. And I like how that's why it gives Rhaenyra such a motivation to fight for the throne, because they're like so many people are gonna fucking die in like, you know, in the coming seasons. And I like that this is like, it's like a belief belong themselves, that like it's like a duty and a destiny they have. And I like that, because I think if you don't have that, you have to have the idea of like, well, why is this family like feel like they're entitled to be kings and queens and prince, like why did they feel like they have this role? And because they literally like, there's like this prophecy that's passed down through their family, and like the sense of like magic and like duty, also the idea that like the Targaryens also are seen as like being almost like closer to like a god-like thing because of like their power with the dragons. And that's like, that kind of leads back into like you know, like ancient Egyptian like pharaohs and stuff like that, that they were like gods on earth. That's, I just think that's more, I think that's like well thought out and interesting, and it makes sense for me, because I heard some people talk about like the monarchy doesn't make sense in this, and I'm like, I think it does for what they're going for.
Yeah, I absolutely do think it makes sense, and having that prophecy, even though I mean there's no way for Rhaenyra to know that he's telling the truth or whether he's crazy or not. Like, I think just that, like, that dedication to her father, and I mean it also comes from like just centuries of stories from Targaryens who have had visions and whatnot.
Yeah,
like
visions that came
like,
true.
That came true.
That's how. That's how they escaped the doom. Like that's what happened with Valyria, their old country or whatever. There was basically like a doom, which they it's kind of implied that it was like Pompeii, like just like huge volcanoes like shot off and like burned everyone alive. But someone in their family, it was like Daenerys the Dreamer or whatever, Daenerys Targaryen. She had a dream years before the doom happened, and that's why the family escaped. That's why the Targaryens left Valyria and then they went to Dragonstone, is because, so there's like the sense of like we can trust our dreams and our prophecies because they've come true.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right. I think it makes the whole thing seem less petty, and it helps you to understand the characters' motivations a little bit more. And I guess that's, and I don't know, even though Alicent is definitely like a sympathetic character, her side, I think particularly because of Otto Hightower, her dad, is a little bit more, I mean, like, is definitely more unlikable, because it seems like he is really just doing it because he wants to get as much power as he possibly can, when Rhaenyra's, motivations are more that she thinks that she has this duty to the realm to save it from the White Walkers or whatever is coming.
Oh, I want to talk a bit more about like the Hightower motivation, and I hope they talk about this more in like the other seasons, because they do talk about this in the books. But there's a lot of conspiracies about the Maesters, because if you remember at the very beginning, in like the first episode, when Viserys is named heir over Rhaenys, they're reading it like from like a vote, basically, like out of a book, and it's a Maester that reads it, and there's like basically this theory that like the Maesters are conspiring against the Targaryens because they don't like and they don't trust dragons. And Viserys's dragon died already. So his family had less dragons on that side, and because he was also male, they had this idea of like the Maesters may have actually picked Viserys over Rhaenys, even if Rhaenys was like voted to be like the new heir, because Rhaenys had a dragon and also her son Laenor had a dragon, and they're trying to like there's this conspiracy that like the Maesters are trying to like weed dragons out of the family and the throne. And then also like the Faith of the Seven is like really closely connected to the Hightowers, and that's like the dominant religion that's kind of taking over there. And I think there's also some talk about like the Maesters are like working with like the Faith of the Seven, like the church or like, the religion or whatever. So they're trying to like get rid of the Targaryens and kind of like take over the monarchy, basically.
And I mean, you definitely see Alicent sort of adopt more of that religious like iconography and like wearing like a necklace and stuff as it goes on. So I'm sure that that's something that they're gonna try to play into more and more. Maybe it's a way to kind of justify to the populace them taking over if people don't. Because I'm curious if, I don't know. I like, obviously they saw Aegon get crowned, a lot of the people of King's Landing, but it does make me wonder, like, are they going to learn that it was like essentially like a deathbed confession, and is that going to be something that people believe? And maybe they will just be fine with it because they want like a powerful male heir, but who knows? I wonder. I'm assuming that's something they'll go into in the next season a little bit more.
Well, Otto even talked about this when he goes to Dragonstone to like negotiate with the Rhaenyra, and he's like, Aegon has the Conqueror's name, he has the Conqueror's sword and the Conqueror's crown, and he's like a man, and he's like, they basically engineered for him to have as many symbols of legitimacy as possible. So it just seems like a stronger claim than Rhaenyra, because that's another thing why they always reuse so many names, is because the family thing, like naming people after your family, which actually did happen in actual monarchies. I see a lot of people complain about that, being like, everyone's named the same thing, and it's like, well, it actually makes sense if you like look at the family tree and how people name their kids.
It makes sense because like it sort of fosters like a feeling of nostalgia too. It makes it like there's that blood connection, and it sort of like helps them to harken back to that older leader. Like I think I mean, at the time, when people were dumb, I think that made sense.
I think another thing too is they don't really talk about like how Rhaenyra named her first son with Daemon to Aegon to like piss off Alicent. They talk about that in the books. I wish they didn't really mention it too much in the show, but maybe they will next season.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something they'll get into a little bit more. I'm definitely looking forward to next season. I heard that it was gonna be a little bit like the production was gonna be a little bit longer though. I read somewhere that it might not come out until like early 2024. I don't know how true that is. I hope it doesn't take that long.
I think that makes sense, because I think they're starting filming next like spring.
Oh, yeah.
And then they'll so it's probably, if I had to guess, it's probably going to come out maybe like spring 2024.
Yeah, that actually totally, I mean, yeah, if they haven't even started shooting yet, that completely makes sense. But I'm fine. They take as much time as you need. I don't need them to rush another Game of Thrones show.
No.
You know what I mean?
No. Take your time. Spend all the money on editing you need to, pay the script writers well, fill up the craft service table. I don't know.
Take an extra year if you need it. Like as much as it sucks to have to, because I really did like this so much to have to wait like another year. It's like, you know what? Like I will wait as long as it needs to take. I'll wait. But I'm sure that they're planning on other spin-off series too. So like I'm
not as interested in the other spin-off series, but we'll see, because I wasn't interested in this in the beginning. But I don't know. I like dragons. Like, dragons are cool, so that's part of the reason why I'm like, oh yay, this show has dragons.
And they look great. Like something we haven't. I mean, there's like so fucking much to talk about. I'm sure people are going to be like, oh, you missed this, and it's like, yeah, this is a 10-hour really dense show, so there's going to be things we miss. But the dragon, they look in that final scene especially. They look so fucking good. Like, it's amazing CGI work. Like, just incredible work.
I like how they gave all the dragons a bit more of a distinct look and personality versus, like, the Game of Thrones dragons, where they all kind of look the same, except for, like, their color palette swapped out.
Yeah, they really are. They really do all look distinctively different. And also, like, oh my god, just... Yeah, that final scene is really, like, some of the best special effects work that I've probably ever seen, even compared to some movies. So I don't know. It's this.
Oh, it was great.
Incredible.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, and beautiful too, for sure.
I don't know how much of like the behind the scenes you've watched, but they talked about how for Daemon's dragon Caraxes, it's technically like a deformed dragon because it's known as like the bloodworm, and that's technically not the shape of that dragons are supposed to be. Like, they're not supposed to be like that long and skinny. But then they also said that like that whistling noise that Caraxes makes is because he has a deviated septum.
Huh.
So I love the details that they put in that for the dragon.
That's amazing. And that's just like, that's such a crazy attention to detail. Not to keep bringing it back to Game of Thrones, but that, like, as that show went on, you could tell that they had less and less of, and they just wanted the characters to kind of spout one-liners, and, you know, I love that, like, attention to detail, and I feel like that's something that makes, like, filmmaking great. Like, that's the reason that I love it. That's one of the reasons I love it so much. So it's just, I need to watch more of the behind-the-scenes stuff. I actually really haven't seen any of it.
I think there's a bunch on YouTube, and then I think also at the end of all the episodes on HBO, there's like a behind the scenes featurette thing.
Yeah, is there anything else you wanted to get to about the show? Do you want to just kind of give your general thoughts about it? Would you recommend this show to people?
Oh yeah, I think I know a lot of people were hesitant to watch Game of Thrones because I know a lot of people didn't like all the rape that was in Game of Thrones. I guess there is kind of like implied, there is implied rape in here, but you're not watching like rape scenes in the show. So if that's something that bothered you with Game of Thrones, I just think it's really good. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, I'm very excited. I feel like they did a good job. I feel like it has a good setup for like next season. And if you like fantasy shows, or you like shows with like political drama or anything like that, I don't see why you wouldn't like this. I think George R. R. Martin is like our Tolkien, if that makes sense, because like Tolkien is from England, but George R. R. Martin is American, so he's like our Tolkien. I don't know.
Yeah, and I would agree with everything you just said, and I think that you could even watch this. I mean, like you have, kind of, but I think you could even watch this without having seen Game of Thrones at all, like, or even knowing anything about it.
Yeah,
like, you really could just jump right into this, and I think that I would honestly, at this point, I mean, obviously it's just the first season, I think I would be more apt to recommend this over the original Game of Thrones series, because it's just, again, a million people have said this better than I could, but that final season is just such a just nosedive. It's so bad, and it makes it really hard to recommend that show for that reason, even though there's a lot of good stuff in it. Yeah, the rape is definitely became, I feel like, more and more gratuitous as it went on, and it kind of reveled in it in a weird way, and it showed it in a...
I know a lot of people really didn't like that. Yeah. Like, I've heard a lot of people say, like, they just didn't want to watch people getting raped in the show all the time. So I like that they took that... It feels like they heard that criticism and they took it seriously. And they still have rape in... Yeah, they still have, like, it's implied that, like, Aegon, like, raped the servant girl, but they don't show it. They show, like, the aftermath of, like, Alicent finding out and being like, you need to take this tea so you lose the baby. And like, that's more that's more interesting, and it keeps the plot going more, and it has more going on than just like showing someone getting raped for like the 10th time.
Yeah, instead it's a character it's a character building moment for Allison, because it really shows that how just how fucking horrible her life has become in some ways, and how difficult it is for her to deal with her children.
Yeah.
Instead of just show, and you don't necessarily need to see it. And I'm not saying there's no circumstances where in a film or TV show you can't show that, but it is really complicated, and I think that the original Game of Thrones show, it crossed that line a lot, to the point where, again, especially later on in the series, and I think people will know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I again highly recommend this. I think this is one of my favorite shows on TV right now, if not my favorite show on TV. I really it's just I do think it's funny. It really started off as something that I was didn't even plan on watching at all, and it's something that I really looked forward to every week when it was airing. So yeah, I'm excited for whenever they're able to finish it. Take your time. It's okay. You can wait until 2025 if we need to.
Dragon Tales.
Yeah, I'll close this out with the Dragon Tales music.
Dragon Tales, Dragon Tales. I don't remember the rest of the song.
Something Dragon Tales. Perfectly in key.